from 4 order members, Jyotita, Paraga, Aryavachin and Kshantika. And I just want to say that Aryavachin is not well, but he's doing this anyway. So thank you, Aryavachin, for being here and still wanting to give you a talk. He might not be here for the afternoon because, yeah, he's not well. And Krunavacha also is not well, so she's in bed resting. So
she's joined us.
Oh, she's joined us, I just hear. Hello, Krunavacha. You're not well.
You realise I could join you.
Yeah.
I'm not very well, but I can join you from my bed.
Yeah, very good. Lovely. So, yeah, those 4 talks are on the Sangharavastus, the 4 means of unification, 4 means of 4 practices in a way, areas of practice for us all to help create Sangha, to build a healthy, inspiring, effective Sangha community. And also with that, actually unifying factors for in every situation, any situation. I said quite a bit about it last night, so I won't repeat that. But I want to actually, before we start, Kusala Devi, would you say something again about the retreat lounge? Some people might not know about that.
Yeah, sure. I think I've invited everyone who's on the retreat to it. So yeah, just it's a chance for us to, if we want to, those of us that want to, just to sort of communicate a little bit between the sessions. So what I didn't say yesterday is that Slack is not a channel, it's not like Zoom, it's just a channel for sort of text. So it'd be like just little messages that we could send to each other and things that we can share there. So I've shared the dedication ceremony verses from last night because they're very beautiful verses that some of you might not have heard before. So yeah, hopefully you've all had an invite. If you haven't, just let me know in the chat privately, and then I can just make sure that I add you. But yeah, we just thought if we were on an actual retreat, we'd actually be sitting in the lounge between sessions and hanging out with each other. So I just thought, oh, why not have some sort of virtual retreat lounge and be together in that way instead? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm going to ask one of you to put the program in the chat as well, so everybody can see it. So this session is 1.5 hours. And then we have a short tea break, 1/4 hour, and then we come back all together first and then split into smaller groups to actually just explore the material from the talks, really. Yeah, so I won't talk very long, but I do want to actually say something about these 4 speakers today, and I'll do that first, and then I'll let them do their talks. So first is Jyotita, who's going to talk about generosity. Now, Jyotita is a burst of energy. He's a warm heart that explodes with enthusiasm and ideas. Yeah, he's very generous with his time and energy for the Sangha. And I know that practice of generosity is really close to his heart. He's also generous in sharing his house, as we saw last night with the Melbourne clan. Yeah, it's amazing how he and his wife Caroline, how they keep opening the home to their kids and partners, and also to their friends. Like now, Artabandhu is living with them as well, and it's not a very big house as far as I can tell. So, yeah, very generous, and I think it's really apt that he will speak on generosity. And then the next speaker will be Paraga, a very special man. He will talk on loving speech. Yeah, he's a very special man. He was one of the people running the centre when I first came to Nottingham, and we overlapped. We worked together for the centre for a while until he moved to Padmaloka Retreat Centre. And now he's back in Nottingham, living with Kusala Devi. I love Paraga's depth. I love his wonderful sense of humour. And I also love the way he speaks in a way. Yeah, I just love him. So, and he's also not afraid to speak out. And yeah, I'll look forward to hearing what he's got to say about loving speech. And then the next speaker will be Aryavachin. So not so well today, very cold I hear. I hope it gets warm. Aryavachin, thank you again for rejoicing in me last night. That was so heartwarming, and I feel you are a really good friend, and I love working with you at the center. Aryavachin lives in Abirati community above the center, and he's very passionate about community living, creating a context of spiritual practice within a Buddhist community. And at the moment, the community is going through some changes, and he's thinking really, really inspiringly and passionately with the others in the community how to create, how to re-inspire in a way, build a new community up with new inspiration. He's a dedicated meditator, and he really puts himself at the service of the Sangha here in Nottingham with creativity and energy. And also in a very inclusive way. I've never heard or hear Aryavachin say, oh, I don't like so-and-so. I really have never heard him say something like that. He's open to anybody. So yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing him speak on beneficial activity. And then Kshantika, sitting here next to me. Again, someone very generous with her time and energy for the center. She does a lot for the center, next to an almost full-time job. She's led Mitra study for many, many, many years. I think it must be about 15 or 16 or so, never taken a break from that. Very dedicated to that. She's been on the center council for many years. She's now freely offering yoga and breathing space sessions for the center. She's often a quite quiet presence in the background, but she's very perceptive, wise, loyal, and kind, appreciated by many. So that is Kshantika. So she'll be speaking about the area of exemplification. So there you go. Enough said, and that gives all speakers about 18 minutes or so. I'll do a bell after 18 minutes, I'll be timing. And then, if you're speaking and you're really in the midst of something still, just take a bit of time to finish your talk. We have to be reasonably tight on that timing wise, because there's 4 of you and we want a little tea break as well before the group. So there you go. I'll be strict. Hey, okay, so the first speaker is Jyotida. Jyotida, over to you on generosity.
Thank you, Kimisteri. No pressure then in terms of time. I'll be none at all whatsoever.
Relax.
Well, hi everybody. It's really great to see you all. I've just got a wall full of faces on me now looking at the screen here, so this is fantastic. So I do feel like I'm talking to you all. So right, so let's kick in then, seeing as I've got 17.59 seconds counting. So I'm doing generosity, so let's dive straight in. So firstly, I'm going to try and conjure a bit of a space before we move into generosity. So if you can just see here, Ratnasambhava. So I guess a lot of you are familiar with Ratnasambhava. If you're not, he is one of the Jinas, one of the Buddhas of the mandala, 5 Buddha mandala, and he represents dana, giving, generosity. Not even represent, he is the abundance of it all. He's the manifestation of it in its most transcendental, beautiful form. So I'm going to go and try and create a bit of Ratnasambhava here from Vasantra's book and just read this to you. So a little bit of a atmosphere. Okay. So let's go into the southern realm of the mandala, known as the glorious. Instantaneously, you are standing in a vast, fertile plain. In all directions, ripe wheat is waving in the gentle breeze. Your thirst has disappeared. Ahead of you is a palace. It is not huge and imposing, but beautifully proportioned and regular. It is built on a human scale, like the temples of ancient Greece. It is made of gold and studded with jewels and semi-precious stones. You approach the gates. They are golden yellow and stand four square. Inside there is great abundance. There are riches everywhere. Tropical vegetation casts flowers in myriad forms at your feet. Your path is made of jewels. Within the palace, all is abuzz with creative activity. Poets, musicians, artists, and sculptors are producing works in praise of a figure at the center of it all. They follow his every movement like sunflowers constantly turning to face the sun. The yellow Buddha, Ratnasambhava, sits on a great yellow lotus throne, supported by 4 horses. In his left hand, which rests on his lap, he holds a beautiful jewel. His right rests on his right knee, palm outwards, in a gesture of supreme giving. His generosity is limitless. He provides everything the dwellers in his pure land could wish for. He supplies the materials for all the artists and writers in his realm. It is the golden light emanating from his body that causes the profusion of growth in all the plants and foliage. Being in his world, you feel an abundance of energy and creativity and overflowing happiness. You feel love and wisdom increasing like plants growing in fertile soil. So on this wet, cold, drippy day, we can get a sense of this beautiful gold emanating from generosity. So just try and connect. What does that emotional feel like? It's imagination here. We're into the realms of beautiful, imaginative, evocative language. And automatically we start to feel, I don't know if you feel it, but I feel lighter inside. I feel more brighter inside. And this is where the generosity can come from with them, which we're going to explore in a brief little talk. But this beautiful sort of language, it almost evokes like a utopia, I think. And that's something really powerful in the human spirit, the utopian. There's always been sort of, in some ways, for us wanting to think that's utopian. You know, it could be like in, what was it, El Dorado, not the TV show, if some of you are older than enough for me to recognise, but El Dorado, the land in where they found it, and all the pebbles was gold and precious stones, and the kids were playing with stones like, you know, like bowls, and they was using precious stones, and there's a sense of beauty everywhere. Everywhere was rich, overflowing with food. Then there's like Plato's Republic, even like Star Trek, you know, Gene Roddenberry. What they all pertain to is a sense of sameness, a sense of equality that spreads throughout. So this is sort of the imaginative realm I want to try and tap into a little bit with the generosity. This sort of abundance and sameness. But I think before we talk about how we do that as a Sangha and how we do that in creating our own Buddha land, particularly when we talk about this means of unification, I think we need to look at our own relationship with generosity. How do we feel about generosity? What's our individual relationship with generosity? Because this for me is absolutely, I mean, generosity is a foundation of Buddhism. It's a bedrock. It just flows through everything. From when the Buddha went out and spread the Dharma to the last days of his life, he was being generous, spreading the word of the Dharma. His whole being was generous. And so what is our relationship to it? And I was thinking the other day, if I went into Nottingham and did like a COVID social distancing in Nottingham, a poll, and said to the people there, what's your relationship to generosity? How do you feel about generosity? I bet you a lot of people would go, how much are you asking for? How much do you want? Do you want some? I'm walking out of here, because a lot of time, I think what we base generosity on can be just in that transactional monetary nature. I mean, it's not surprising in some ways, is it? Particularly in this sort of society we live in. I mean, this would have been the same round of the Buddhist time. You know, this is nothing new, but we've got so good at it now. We live in this sort of mercantile, transactional world where we amass resources by whatever we're doing, and then we're sort of looking to use those resources to get something, you know, need something. And sometimes we don't even know what we need. People tell us what we need, and then we say, oh, we need that. But we're so fine-tuned into this sort of transactional nature now. And I think that is an aspect of it. You know, giving money is an aspect of what we can do. And, you know, that's a very powerful aspect to generosity, which I'll touch on in a bit. But it's a starting point of what we can do with generosity. We can be generous in our whole being, our whole entirety. But yeah, it's kind of in some ways that I think we have to be a bit easy on ourselves. You know, it's very idealistic to go and talk sometimes about how generous we can go and be. But I think there's a bit of a survival mechanism in our bodies, you know, in our DNA, our evolution, our sort of how we are, that, you know, to give up something completely, to give up something without wanting to receive anything, or trying to keep a bit of security, is very difficult. The other day I was sort of out at work and I was sitting there, and with this guy who I support has got, he makes bird tables, pretty funky bird tables, and he piles them up with nuts, and this squirrel came bouncing along, pretty fat squirrel, and like ran up the bird table, grabbed on the top there, grabbed a nut, tanked off again into the distance, buried it, came back, grabbed another nut and buried it. So there's this sense of it's getting his nuts to go and save them for later. You know, a sense of, oh, you know, what could happen? I'm thinking, speaking what a squirrel might think here, by the way. But I can imagine the squirrel thinking, oh, you know, I need to go and keep some nuts for later, just in case something happens. And then, you know, the other day I did see that a rat came along and went up and grabbed some nuts. So it was pretty much right. Something could happen, like the rat's going to nick his nuts, which can happen to all of us. I mean, this year we've sort of seen that things can happen around us that really affect our security. So having a sense of wanting to have some sort of keep something back for that, it's understandable, isn't it? But it's really limiting as well. There's a naivety to it in our experience, because as we can see, things can change around us. There's no security in conditioned existence, what we have. We think there is, but there is nothing there. One day that squirrel's going to have no nuts, the rat's going to have no nuts. There may even be no nuts. You know, this life we have is going to fall apart at some point. So this idea that we're going to get security and keeping things back is you know, it's based in delusion. So yeah, it's limited. So how do we work with this? How do we work with this generosity? Sort of how can we sort of imbue generosity and go beyond this sort of fear? Well, one thing is just practicing it, sensing it in our experience, seeing how it feels, noticing how generosity feels, and going beyond, like I say, just the idea of giving some money, or being generous in everything aspect of our spirit, you know, our energy, our metta, our compassion, our wisdom, our awareness, patience, being even generous in silence and generous in time. We can be abundant with generosity. We can get up in the morning and we pull the duvet back. And if every morning we got up and said, right, I'm going to be generous in a real aspect of my day today, we'd have something to really bring our whole being to. And it can lead to insight. It can lead to real changes into our habits. I know it has for me. And I'm going to share like a little insight with you here. It's a bit embarrassing to share a little insight. I feel like I'm getting undressed with the blind slightly open. But I'll yeah, the other day I was walking, and I was doing a bit of study while I was walking. I was listening to some stuff, like a talk, and then I was doing some like dictaphone afterwards. I was reflecting on some of the things. So I was walking along in sort of this wood, and I crossed a bridge, and I was busy talking to myself. And as I crossed the bridge, there was a woman that had opened the gate, waited for me to cross the bridge. And as I passed, she sort of said, "Oh, thank you. You're welcome." And I was like, oh, yeah, thank you, yeah. And I carried on like walking along, and I carried on doing what I was doing. I was sort of dictating away. I was caught up in my own little world sort of thing. And but I noticed that there was this sort of sense of darkness, poison, anger, hate, just in the back of my mind. And I was trying to push it away a little bit, like, obviously, she's a lovely lady. Oh, these things happen. But I couldn't, it was there. So I just stopped what I was doing and just sat with that. And I just sat down and I just thought and just reflected on that space of what that was. And there was something about it. Once I sort of got the real, this is the energy behind this, I started to look at it. What it was, that this woman let me by. She was generous to let me come first. And then at the same time, when I was not there and I didn't reciprocate generosity, she reacted to it. She was like, oh, I wanted to be congratulated. I want to be thanked. I wanted politeness. I wanted something from that. And as soon as I sort of identified what it was that was really annoying me, I saw that that's what I can do in myself. And then suddenly I saw this like mirror light between me and this lady, that we're very similar in that way. That she was suffering when I didn't congratulate her and thank her for what she did. And then I was suffering afterwards because I was thinking about this and it created up this. In fact, that suffering was what connected me and her. And then suddenly I was like walking along and I just thought, oh God, we're just both suffering here, aren't we, in this sort of situation? And the fixedness of it all just dissolved. And then I walked along and I felt a lot more, I felt better than I did prior to that. I felt more freer. And I think that's what generosity can go and give you. It can free you up. So it's worth trying to know in whatever aspects we're being generous, that sort of sense on that there, because that will inspire us even more and more. So we've got this sort of level of, we're working with our own generosity. What's time scale, Barna? Kimasiri, how many have I got? Oh, I'm wasting
time. Another 2 minutes.
Oh, right, okay.
I know, it's long, isn't it? See?
That's not enough, I'm on it. Right, okay. Right, so that's some way, guys, that's sort of the way we work at it in our own world, okay? There's always going to be a pull in it. We are not there yet. Some of you might be, but I'm just making presumptions here, but I'm certainly not. But we can go to the next level, the transcendental level of generosity. And I'm going to go and bring Shantideva into this, because Shantideva doesn't muck around. If after you want to go and ask some questions about this, we can talk about it. But Shantideva doesn't muck around. So I'm going to give you a couple of quotes here, okay? So the first one is, may I be an inexhaustible treasure for impoverished beings. May I wait upon them with various forms of offering. So an inexhaustible treasure for impoverished beings. Then the next one, which is the real goes for it. I make over this body to all embodied beings to do with as they please. Let them continually beat it, insult it, and splatter it with filth. So Shantideva is there completely going to the transcendental aspect of what we can achieve. It's in all of us to achieve. Is this complete and utter giving ourselves unto something with no wanting any reciprocation whatsoever. It's complete giving with abundance. So we can do that individually, and we can do that as a Sangha. We come together, we can inspire each other, we can be creative, we can support each other. We can create something that is a beacon of generosity. We can create this Buddhaland, this unification. If we work on it individually and come together, we can create something that can really inspire. And I do actually think it can change the world in a very, very real sense. and we're all a part of that. Push there.
Thought it was unmuted. Thank you, Jyotida. Thank you very much. Inspiring. So, just take a few deep breaths before we move on to the next talk by Paraga. There will be quite a bit to take in, but obviously all inspiring. Okay, Paraga, over to you on loving speech.
Thanks, Komi. Can everyone hear me okay?
We can.
Good. My iPad's been weird at the moment. Hold on, let me see. All good. Okay, yep. Thanks, Komi. So I'm going to be talking about Priyavadita, or loving, affectionate, or kindly speech. Where to start? I mean, I suppose essentially, you know, what would actually, my first response to this idea of loving, kindly, or affectionate with speech is to sort of, on a superficial level, kind of crawl back in horror, because I sort of think it sounds a little bit wet or something like that, which of course it isn't, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But I think there's something about affectionate speech. I can imagine sort of lovers just whispering, pillow whisperings to each other in the evening or something like that. It's not that at all, but that's my sort of gut response as to kindly speech, which probably says more about me than anything. So I'll talk about kindly, Priyavadita, and how does it arise. So essentially, Priyavadita will arise, or will only be present, when metta is present. So it's not just metta, it's a quality of metta that is really able to sort of empathize with other people. So it's a metta, or an empathy, that really sees all of the other person in all their different aspects. But it's in a way seeing the other person quite deeply with regard to the fact that this other person is just like us. They just want to experience happiness in their lives, basically. They just want to be free from suffering and experience happiness. So it's having an empathy with that however weird or messed up other people appear to be, there's two things. Firstly, we can also appear to be weird and messed up to them, but the other fact is that whatever people are doing is, they're just trying to, it's natural for human beings to just try and find happiness and meaning in their life, or just avoid suffering. So loving speech arises from metta, which is a responding to other beings. And what so just a few points about it. It's going to be speech. Again, it's difficult to say exactly what loving speech is, but I can only sort of, I suppose, hint towards it. Aspects you'll find in it is it's going to be based in a simple rejoicing in others. So in a way, one of my points later, which I might just say now, is how to notice loving speech. How can you sort of notice it? And in a way, you've probably noticed quite a bit of it just even on this sort of Sangha retreat. It's rejoicing in merits. It's an awareness of others and their qualities. You saw how Kemsiri very easily and readily spoke about the four of us that were doing the talks. And so it's that ready aspect to be able to sort of rejoice in the merits of another person. And again, you'll see that more this weekend. It's people are going to probably be rejoicing in Kusala Devi at some point. She's sort of stepping into the chair role. So you get it quite a lot in Sangha events, and it's always a sign of a sort of a healthy Sangha. Is this quality of rejoicing in the merits of others is always kind of very, very close to hand, really. And it's also speech that expresses gratitude towards others. It's expressive of the fact that you see that you've benefited from, you know, in some way from the actions of another person. And in a way, it has a quality of sort of readiness and smoothness to it. There shouldn't really have to be a great leap for us to sort of practice loving speech. It should, ultimately, it would arise completely spontaneously and naturally. In a way, we do need to practice it, though. We do need to try and, you know, work out our clunky sense of self-identity and practice kind of kindly, positive speech. But also, it's good to sort of notice when is it near. So you might feel it to be near. Again, on a Sangha event, like last night, well, even now, it's just really lovely to see you all and meditating this morning. It was just very nice to feel in connection with you all. So in that aspect, you can see that the quality of metta and lovingness or affection is close. And then for us to express that, well, we're then moving into Priyavadita. So it's that sense of connection and warmth towards others. So it's noticing when that's present in your experience. And bringing about Priyavadita is a simple exclamation of that state. So it's simply sort of saying, you know, that, I don't know, it was just lovely to hear Jyotika talk then, or so it's feeling that, but then it's the expression of it is what moves it into Priyavadita. And so, you know, you can just notice this weekend when there are points where you feel more in connection with others, or just a sort of a sense of gratitude to other people on the weekend, or sense of connection or resonance or whatever it is. So, you know, the Priyavadita aspect, as I said, would just be the communication of that, really. La la la. What else? I think it's also it can particularly happen in Sangha because it's speech that arises from enough of an understanding of Dharmic principles. So this is what differentiates it from just, I suppose, normal positive speech, which one should be in touch with anyway, and hopefully one is in touch with in other areas. But Priyavadita, in terms of the Sangharavastus, is it's speech that arises off enough of an understanding of Dharmic principles. Those Dharmic principles being that all beings this side of enlightenment experience dukkha, that all beings experience suffering due to attachment and aversion arising from ignorance. So it's almost like when one begins to imbue one's consciousness with enough of an understanding of dukkha, then Priyavadita is very near at hand, because you sort of see the mess we're all in, and you know, you want to respond to that, and you respond to it in lots of ways through, you know, deepening your Buddhist practice, but you also respond to it through trying to support others, help others, rejoice in others, express gratitude towards others, so that, you know, they can be sort of to help them be sort of free from their suffering, and to sort of deepen their understanding of the nature of reality. So it's not just it has many effects, affectionate speech. It's not just that it makes people feel better. I mean, that's great, but it's also, it will deepen one's understanding of reality, basically. I mean, that's maybe something we could sort of think about or talk about in the groups. Just quickly, what Priyavadita isn't. So it's not just talking so others will simply like us. It's not just wanting to be nice. It doesn't arise out of a fear of disagreeing with others or a fear of conflict. So, you know, we're not just trying to keep everything superficial and just say nice Buddhist things. It's more, you know, it's not glossing over difficulty. Loving speech can be present when there's difficulty present as well. So that can be helping someone to understand, you know, maybe why they feel really out of connection with another person and why they're feeling ill will towards someone. So loving speech can be present then, or even if you're trying to understand your disagreement with another person, you know, the willingness to empathize or connect with that other person, even though you're still finding them difficult, there'll be qualities of sort of kindly, affectionate speech there. So it's not just speech which tries to avoid conflict. Again, you know, we've got to work all this out in our experience, and which isn't always straightforward. We're not trying to be perfect. We don't have to try and be. I think this is maybe where I trip up on Priyavadita, because, and why I think it's a bit nice, which it isn't, and I'm just aware that that's my limitation. But there's something I think about that we need to be careful that we're not trying to be perfect in our speech. So our speech doesn't need to be perfect and absolutely acutely kind and intensely sensitive. You know, we don't have to be perfect beings to practice Priyavadita. You know, we can just try and have a go. And like I said, it's a simple rejoicing in merit, simple acknowledgement of another being and expressing that, you know, that's the area that you'll sort of find it. So it doesn't mean we have to sort of be perfect. Who should it be practiced towards? So specifically, you could say these means of unification, the four Samgrahavastus, are present in the Sangha. But if it's only present in the Sangha and it's not present elsewhere in your sort of life outside of the Sangha, however that presents itself, then it's not going to be present in the Sangha. So it has to be deep. Priyavadita has to be deep enough to be able to be in contact with all beings that you come into contact with. So it's not just in Sangha context that we would practice Priyavadita. And in a way, all beings need us to be able to practice Priyavadita, because all beings, as ourselves, are kind of suffering and want to be free from suffering. So, you know, if we're just practicing it in Sangha and then at work we're just being a bit hard or a bit kind of coarse or grim with people, then, you know, we can't just flick the Priyavadita switch and the metta switch and do it within Sangha. We just need to do it across the board to all beings. And again, we need a sensitive awareness to how to do it with people who don't have an understanding of or aren't interested in, you know, Dharma practice. But at the same time, Priyavadita really should just be quite easy to do, because it's not complicated. It's not like we're trying to explain some abstruse Dharmic principle to someone. We're just being kind, you know. So it's quite straightforward. So we should be able to just do that in any context with anyone, and just see how that feels as well. So all beings need us to be able to practice all of the Samgrahavastus and all of the and Priyavadita. Just finally, one thing is how to notice it, because for us to try and practice it, we need to be able to have a sense of what it looks like and how to notice it. We'll just notice it in others first. If there's people like, you know, the example of Kamisiri sort of rejoicing in qualities of the four of us that are giving talks, well, that's an example of Priyavadita there. So it's noticing when other people do it and just picking up that aesthetic quality of what it looks like, what it sounds like, the effect it has on you. And if there's someone that you connect with that seems to do it readily, well, just pay attention to that person in a way. Just notice, oh, well, when do they do it? How do they do it? And how could we sort of practice like that? And just the other thing is noticing when someone specifically has done it to you and what that felt like. So it's in lots of different ways. We're trying to sort of fan the flames of Priyavadita and saying, you know, how do you do it? Noticing other people that do it. What does it feel like when someone does it to us? What context is it easier to do it? When do we have to take a bit of a risk to do it? So there's all these different areas that we can try and bring about this sense of, you know, kind, loving speech. Well, I think that's under 15 minutes and I don't think I've got anything else to say. So there you go. Thank you.
Wow, Paraga, thank you very much. You put a lot in 15 minutes. Yeah, thank you very much. Very thoughtful, thought-provoking. So again, just take a couple of breaths. There's all of this kind of, go into your body, create some spaciousness before we go on to the next talk. So get our minds in a way and hearts ready for the next speaker. The next aspect of unification, creating unification, building Sangha. And that's Aryavachin now on beneficial activity. Hello, Aryavachin. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kamasiri, especially for the introduction. And thank you for the previous two speakers. So when I received my theme for this morning, beneficial activity, the first thought that arose in my mind was, well, this is the less sexy of all the Sangharavastus. And it's not that it's not important, it's very important, but it's just, it's probably easy just to think that, it's quite obvious in a way. So the title is beneficial activity. Yeah, so it's quite straightforward if you want. It's quite fundamental to the Buddhist tradition. So a very succinct way of talking about the Dharma, talking about this path is through these verses, which are universal across the Buddhist world. Not to do evil, any evil, to cultivate good, to purify one's heart. This is the teaching of all the Buddhas. So that's the most pithy way of describing the Buddhist path. This Sangharavastus, beneficial activities, is at the heart of it. So it's the original wording, and bear with me because my mind is not working fully this morning. The original wording is Artacharya. Yeah? So Arta as in Artabandhu, who is with us this weekend, the first part of his name, which means meaning, sense, goal, or purpose. And Charya, that can be translated basically as action, yeah? But also can be practice or conduct. Yeah? So it could be very easily translated as doing good, but then this is a very interesting twist. Yeah, it could be translated as doing good, but it's not about good doers. Yeah, or going about behaving in a way that is a bit naive, a bit gullible. Also, as Jyotida say, we can be sometimes very idealistic. So this is not about that. This is about acting in the world with wisdom, yeah, coming from a deep understanding of what reality is. And both Paraga and Jyotida mentioned this important aspect about our relationship with reality. Yeah. So I'm going to mention a few ideas and hope this helps to clarify, how we practice these Sangharavastus at a personal level and as a collective level as well. Yeah. So the theme of the weekend is building the Buddha land. And we had a very beautiful introduction last night from Kemasiri, a very beautiful quote as well from Bhante Sangarachita about this idea of this garden, yeah, and this idea of the cosmic gardener as well. And I really like that metaphor. It's a very beautiful metaphor, and that can in a way, can summarize many of the qualities that beneficial activity is trying to point at. So as Paraga was saying in his talk, when we think of our contact with the Sangha, with a spiritual community, It's probably the first thing that comes to mind is a sense of gratitude, an acknowledgement of how much we have received, how much we have benefited from being in contact with a spiritual community. I have heard many people within Triratna, and I could say myself actually, that coming into contact with the Dharma, coming into contact with this tradition, saved my life. And it's not a light statement. I think it's something that many people take very seriously in relation to the Dharma. But this is something that we are engaging in, inspired by the example of the Bodhisattva, or the aspiration of the Bodhisattva. So the Bodhisattva is a very important figure in the Buddhist tradition. We have Jyotidam showing us a Buddha, Ratnasambhava, the Buddha of the South. And this weekend, when we talk about Buddha land, we are trying to evoke as well this altruistic motivation, volition, that the Bodhisattva represents at its highest expression. One Bodhisattva that we are going to be calling upon later on today is that of Avalokiteshvara, a particular form of Avalokiteshvara, which is the 1,000 arms Avalokiteshvara. And we'll be saying a bit more later on in the day about this figure. But I just want to make a bit of it's a bit of a bridge, trying to build a bit of a bridge between this image, this archetypal image, and what we're trying to do. So something that also Kemasiri was referring to last night is the fact that most order members in Nottingham are engaged with this weekend, and something indeed very important that is happening in the midst of this weekend is that we are going to ritually acknowledge, Kusala Devi becoming the chair, which is a very important responsibility, and we're going to talk more about that in the evening. So please don't miss that event, which is very central for us. But the order, this symbol that we are wearing, all the speakers this morning are wearing, and Chantika this morning leading the meditation is part of as well. Represents something very dear to our hearts, which is the order. And Bhante Sangarachita, our founder, our teacher, spoke of the order, the Triratna Buddhist order, as the embodiment of Avalokiteshvara in the world. This particular representation of Avalokiteshvara, with the 1,000 arms Avalokiteshvara. And the idea, and this is just what I'm going to leave you with in relation to Avalokiteshvara this morning, or that form of Avalokiteshvara, is that each of us wearing this around our necks, this kesa, we are in a way aspiring to be an arm and a hand in Avalokiteshvara. Yeah, we are very different, as you can probably already have noticed, with all the speakers that have come. But we are communicating something that is very alive and unites us already. Yeah, we are united by this common aspiration, and that's how we want to be in the world. Yeah, we have different capacities, different faculties, and we are affecting the world. I really like what Kemasiri was saying last night about, hopefully when people come walk across the Lace Market Square, they can experience some of the, if you want, the sphere of influence, that the Nottingham Sangha has created. Wonderfully, in the last year, we have been able to keep going and developing the Sangha, not just keep going and sustaining the Sangha, but developing the Sangha without being using this building as much as we did in the past. So that's interesting as well, because a Sangha is people, is us here today. I'm just going to change my view to the gallery view so I can see most of you. Yeah, that's better. That's more beautiful. As Mark Connor said last night when he was introducing, I don't know if Mark is here today, but the first word that came to his mind was beautiful. Yeah, and that's That's something very important. Paraga was reminding us of that aesthetical element. So it's good to remember that. It's good to remember the benefit that we have received and the people we have received that benefit from. Yeah. Something that I'm always grateful to is the first person that I've ever came across in Triratna, back in my hometown in Merida. The person that opened the door of the Merida Buddhist Center and taught me meditation for the first time. Yeah. So you can think of your life as, you have encountered different benefactors in your life. And that person, the first person that welcomed you into the Sangha, that's one of your main benefactors in your life. And it's always good to remember them, because they have played a role, an important role in these journeys that we have undertaken so far. Yeah. And something very important as well about the spiritual community is that we remember that we are in a flow. Yeah. In a way, I like an expression from one of our teachers in the order, talking of a non-egoistic stream of a spiritual energy. Yeah. A non-egoistic stream of a spiritual energy. So people giving themselves freely in service, as Kemasiri says, their time, their energy to create something that goes beyond them, yeah, individually. So we have received something of that. And every time that we share the Dharma, in a way we are sharing something that we have inherited. It's not fully ours. It's not something that we have discovered. It's something that we have received, yeah, almost like a torch that has been passed on to us. And in a way, it's our duty, if you want, to make that torch bright, very brightly. I don't know. I'm struggling with words this morning. But that we can influence the world in the way that Kemasiri was talking about last night. So it's very important as well that in this process of engaging with the Sangha, we find our own voice. Yeah? We find our own way of communicating that experience of the Dharma transforming our lives. And I'm sure that all of you here today, this morning, have to some extent an experience of that, an experience of the Dharma having an effect in your lives. An effective, positive, transformative experience of being in contact with the Dharma. And that's basically what we do when we come together. We share that, we encourage each other, we support each other on the basis of that. So in Paraga's talk, he was talking about suffering. Yeah? And suffering is something that we are in contact with constantly. And returning to the idea of the Bodhisattva responds directly to suffering. Yeah? It responds with compassion to suffering. And probably nowadays we see suffering more tangibly in our experience and around us. Yeah. Every time that we have been in lockdown, if you walk around town, you have this strange atmosphere. Something that is not normal. Yeah. It feels different. It feels in the emptiness of the streets, in the silence of the street, you feel something, a presence. And I want to, as I usually do, every time that I have the opportunity, I want to read a couple of verses from William Blake, who is one of my favorite poets. And this is a very popular poem from him called London, in one of his books, Songs of Experience. And this is the first 4 lines of that poem. And excuse my accent, it doesn't sound good. I wander through each charted street, near where the charted Thames does flow. A mark in every face I meet, marks of weakness, marks of woe. So is sometimes suffering is self-evident. We don't need to dig too deeply to find suffering. So suffering can be physical suffering in the experience of the body. It can be psychological suffering. That's a very important distinction that Bhante used to do about the difference between the movement in the West and the movement in the East. In the East, in India, for example, our brothers and sisters in India, they are subject to a lot of suffering that is quite immediate. Is a caste system, is social injustice, is poverty, is inequality. In the West, our suffering seems to be a bit more psychological. It's much more about our mental states, much more about our emotions. But also there is another level of suffering, which is existential suffering. Is that to do with the transcendental, that thing that Jyotida was referring to at the end of his talk. And in a way, this Buddha field, this Buddha land that we are trying to create, is trying to meet suffering at all those levels. We are trying to respond to suffering at all those levels. And indeed, there are so many causes in the world that are worthy of our time and our energy, isn't it? I mean, there are so many things that are happening in the world. And I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity just to mention that we're going to run a follow-up course in March, 6 weeks, looking at Buddhist responses to current issues. And the title of the course is What the World Needs Now. So how we as Buddhists, how we that people that are engaged in this quest can get engaged in the world, but from this point of, aspiring to become closer to reality in a sort of in a thinner relationship, in a thinner threshold with reality. So in a way, we need to prioritize. We need to acknowledge that our time and our energies are limited. So we have resources, but resources individually, resources that are limited. So we need to think, what is the most beneficial thing that we can share with others? And each of you might have a different answer for that. And maybe that's something worthy to explore in the groups as well later on. But I just want to talk a bit about my own experience. I was very involved as a social worker in Venezuela, social activist actually in Venezuela for a few years, working in the slums and trying to alleviate suffering, the immediate suffering that people living in very extreme conditions of poverty went through. And at some point in my life, I realized, that there is something, even if you manage to satisfy certain needs, certain basic needs, there is a deeper human need that rarely finds relief. And that meaning for artha, is that meaning for purpose, for meaning, that need for meaning, for purpose. So in my case, I came to the conclusion that the most beneficial activity that I could perform in my life was sharing the Dharma. And as Kemasiri put it, serving that cause. And we are different. All of you is different. I see on my screen right now a very beautiful pattern, a very beautiful arrangement of individualities coming together. So you might have different tools, different skills to influence the world, and that's a very personal choice. So I wouldn't want to prescribe to anybody, what to do. Is your choice. But also, I think we need to think also that there is spiritual communities. These Buddha fields, these Buddha lands, are very rare. They are not very common in the world, and they need our support, our active support. So something that I want to rejoice, following Paraga's advice is advice and it's advice. That's the word. Is rejoice in the strength of the Nottingham Sangha in the last year. That the way that we have come together and we have kept this community virtually evolving and developing, and that we are welcoming new people into the midst of our community. People that don't have, some of them don't have yet an experience of being in this building, but they are participating effectively of the Sangha. So in a way, another way of thinking of this maybe that will help this reflection is ask yourself, what can I do that really helps people to grow? Yeah. What is that I can do that really helps people to grow? Yeah. And I want to introduce it to finish this talk. It's just this very, very important idea that we explore very deeply in our community, which is a differentiation between the power mode and the love mode. Paraga was talking about metta as the basis of Priyavadita. And in terms of us coming together as a Sangha, that metta is the basis of all of our interactions, yeah? all of our exchanges. So love in this case is that what affirms life, encourages growth. When we come together as a Sangha, we are trying to respond to the potential in others, to the best possible version of the other person, even if it's not evident immediately. Yeah. So we are trying to respond to something that is a bit more mysterious. And we do that through friendship. That's the main thing. So something very interesting as well when I was researching for this talk is that these Sangharavastus, the 4 Sangharavastus, are the same that what the Buddha advises to Sigalaka in a very famous sutta as the main 4, the main 5. These are the first 4 of the main 5 advices that he gave in terms of how to honor, how to cultivate friendship. So friendship is the basis of our community, but it's a spiritual friendship. It's a spiritual, is friendship in the beautiful, friendship in what is virtuous. How am I doing with time, Kemasiri?
You're there.
I'm there, okay. So just let me finish with this then. So when we are doing, when we are practicing together, when we are, bringing our minds, turning our minds to what is skillful in the world, we can think of us as avoiding that is evil, cultivating what is good, but also remember that we need to think of benefiting others, that our life has that expression. And just finish with this this line from a very beautiful puja that we do here in Triratna. The bodhisattva is like a big candle that lights up other candles. In a way, we have received that fire, that sacred fire from the Buddha. From the Buddha passed on through generations. It went to the heart, if you want, of Sangharachita, and Sangharachita brought it here to England. And from England has spread around the world, and we are, all of you is like a candle, that has been lit up by this inspiration. So there is a very beautiful verse from the Threefold Puja when we do the offerings to the Buddha, and we say this: reverencing the Buddha, we offer candles. To him who is the light, we offer light. From his greater lamp, a lesser lamp we light within us, the lamp of body shining within our hearts. Thank you.
Thank you, Arivachin. Thank you very much. Well done for not feeling well. So just a bit of quiet, tune into your body, your heart, spaciousness, breathing. in a way letting these words settle. And while we're doing that, I'm making space for Kshantika as our next speaker on exemplification. But I need to move out of the way.
Thank you, Kamasiri, and thank you to everyone so far. Yeah, very inspiring. And in a way, I pick up where Arivarchin left off. Exemplification. So exemplification, in a way, you could see as that light radiating from the Buddha, the light radiating from each of us. But yeah, I'll explore that area. So exemplification. So yeah, when I heard what the subject was for this weekend, called Sangharavastus, for some reason this one, exemplification, stood out as the least attractive, the one I would least likely want to speak about. But then it was interesting. Well, I found it interesting that a few days later, it was actually, I noticed it turning over in my mind, going, what was that? What was that response? Why did I respond like that? And yeah, I saw that it was aspects of self-doubt rumbling away in it. You know, it's like, oh, well, I couldn't possibly talk on exemplification. You know, that it's about the Buddha's light. It's about the qualities of the Buddha emanating. And yeah, I can't talk. What do I exemplify? I think I must have been feeling in a kind of small space. I was more in touch with the fact that, yeah, my imperfections, I can be difficult, I can be annoying, I can find others annoying. So yeah, not in touch with that aspect of what I could exemplify. So what turned that around? Yeah, that sense of that feeling of a gulf between myself and my aspiration, which I'm sure we can all notice that at times. You know, the feeling that I'm not perfect, I'm not consistently wise and kind. But so seeing that, well, I do have times when I'm kinder, wiser. You know, and through my years of practice, I have changed significantly. But acknowledging there are times when I'm not in touch with my inspiration, or, you know, I don't feel like I'm manifesting it. So the times when my deep-seated conditioning gets triggered, Wednesday night, Satchinama talking about views and those triggers. So especially for me, you know, when my early conditioning gets triggered, those are instincts and aspects of me that try and keep me safe. So I can tend to, that, you know, leaves me feeling that gap between what I aspire to in the qualities of the Buddha and where I'm actually at. So then I started reflecting on some aspects of my life of practice and actually who I've been inspired by along the way. Yes, the Buddha's immense compassion and wisdom inspires me, but also have been very touched and inspired by very ordinary, fallible human beings along the way, the people that I've had the good fortune to practice alongside, to rub up against, bump into in my years of practice. You know, and they're the people I've learned from. And people hearing their struggles, their joys, their inspirations, and their failings. Yeah, and over the years, I came to see an extraordinariness in the ordinary. when we're at ease with, more at ease with our failings, with that shortfall between what inspires and guides us, when we're not taking it so personally, so when I see that in others, that they're not holding their failings so tightly and being more fully themselves, so we too can be more fully ourselves if we can practice to become more at ease with ourselves. So here's a quote from Pema Chodron. We see how beautiful and wonderful and amazing things are, and we see how caught up we are. It isn't that one is bad and one is good. So I'll say that again. It isn't that one is the bad part and one is the good part. But it's a kind of interesting, smelly, rich, fertile mess of stuff. When it's all mixed up together, it's us, humanness. This is what we are here to see for ourselves. Both the brilliance and the suffering are here all the time. And as Sangharavastus says in his talk on exemplification, exemplification does not mean embodying a particular static point in the process of spiritual development, however high that point may be. It means embodying the process of spiritual development itself, to however limited an extent. So exemplification does not mean embodying a particular static point in the process of spiritual development, however high that point may be. It means embodying the process of spiritual development itself, to however limited an extent. So in my ponderings and reflections on exemplification, I got to the point where I saw that we can't really do exemplification. We can't decide to be an example to inspire others. We can't dictate how others perceive us, receive what we offer, how we manifest. But we can attend to the conditions that nourish our inspiration and the conditions that support us in being ever more open to and aware of all aspects of ourselves, our strengths, our weaknesses. So becoming more and more ourselves, being authentic, without shame and blame. And it's not about that, it's not about trying to inspire others. And that in that very pursuit, there's a danger that becomes about power and manipulation and about fueling our own egos, buying into the worldly wind of gaining approval from others in that. So something I started to see in reflecting back on my experience was that my ability to perceive the qualities of others changed over time. That exemplification is in the eye of the beholder. We can't control how others perceive us. They perceive us through their own lenses, their own experience, their own interpretations. What we can work on, though, is how we perceive and receive others. And this can have a powerful effect in our interactions. So I started thinking about it as a dialogue and about the quality of our listening and being more fully present to others. So I've got a quote from Tara Brach. We spend most of our moments when someone is speaking, planning what we're going to say, evaluating it, trying to come up with our presentation of ourselves, or controlling the situation. Pure listening is a letting go of control. It's not easy and takes training. And yet it's only when we let go of that controlling that we open up to the real purity of loving. We can't see or understand someone in the moment that we are trying to control what they are saying or trying to impress them with what we are saying. So we can't see or understand someone in the moment that we are trying to control what they are saying or trying to impress them with what we are saying. There's no space for that person to just unfold and be who they are. Listening and unconditionally receiving what another expresses is an expression of love. The bottom line is when we are listening, we feel connected. So the bottom line is when we are listened to, we feel connected. When we're not listened to, we feel separate. So whether it's the communication between different tribes or religions, ethnicities, racial groups, or different generations, we need to listen. The more we understand, the less we fear. The less we fear, the more we trust. The more we trust, the more love can flow. And she gives a lovely example, a metaphor. Isn't it true that to get to know the beauty and majesty of a tree, you have to be quiet and rest in the shade of the tree? Don't you have to stand under the tree? To understand anyone, you need to stand under them for a little while. What does that mean? It means you have to listen to them and be quiet and take in who they are, as if from under, as if from inside out. So, as she says, it's not easy. It takes training. It takes practice. As with meditation, we need to start from where we're at. We can train ourselves in listening as we train in meditation, noticing the distractions, the tensions, the triggers with a kindly awareness, and also noticing where there is space and ease, noticing what supports us to stay present and open. It can take a lot of self-kindness to be willing to notice our internal voices at times, how we dialogue with ourselves. So this brings in the aspect of loving speech in a way. The times when our internal critic kicks in and that turns outwards. Can we cultivate a sense of curiosity and interest in our noticing, rather than adding layers of self-judgment and recrimination? So coming towards the end, I've got a quote from Pema Chodron. Life's work is to wake up, to let the things that enter into the circle wake you up rather than put you to sleep. The only way to do this is to open, be curious, and develop some sense of sympathy for everything that comes along, to get to know its nature and let it teach you what it will. It's going to stick around until you learn your lesson anyway. You can manipulate your world until you are blue in the face to try and make it always smooth, but the same old demons will always come up until finally you have learned the lesson. Then those demons will appear as friendly, warm-hearted companions on the path. So to conclude, yeah, we all, each of us, have an effect on those around us, and not just in what we say, but just how we are. If we're in touch with our inspiration and how we support ourselves, this comes out through our being. Even when we're less than perfect, the more we can come to terms with the reality of our imperfections, and that this does not diminish our aspirations, the more we can fully be ourselves with kindness and with honesty. And when we are more at ease with ourselves in the wholeness of our being, the more fully we can attend to each other, be present with others without an agenda, giving each other the space to unfold. So that aspect of generosity. So giving each other the space to unfold to receive the gifts of each other's inspiration, however imperfectly it is expressed in their being. So just to end, I'll just pop in a couple of things to maybe ponder. So how would it be to fully attend to another, not to deny our responses, but to put them aside and really listen? Listen underneath what is being said and how we are responding. Do we have experience of someone really listening to us, being fully present to us? How does that feel? And what helps us be present and listen more fully? To put aside our own agenda, but not in a self-denying way. So what helps us? Okay. So I shall hand back to Kaimasiri as we come towards our break.
Thank you. Okay. Phew. That was very rich, I say. Yeah, I'll probably all agree with that. Thank you all very much. Jodita, Paraga, Arivachin, Shantika. We are heading for a tea break now, quarter of an hour. And yeah, just in that time, I will put a few things in the chat.